record holder for the most yards ever passing in a single game, Rohan Davey. Emmitt Smith joins us in studio.
It's the first time I played in such a place that had that much noise.
Jock, throw a rock and you'll hit a 3-star cornerback in Louisiana.
Jock Talk is sponsored by Locke Meredith Injury Lawyers.
All right, well, LSU fans certainly know the name Tom Hart. He's called plenty of their games in different sports on the SEC network and different ESPN platforms. He's nice enough to give us some time today. Tom, how are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, it's great to have you. And this is what I like about you, Tom Hart. You got the pipes, you got the great voice, but you're funny. You've got a sense of humor, and I enjoy that about your broadcast, and I hope you know I'm complimenting you here. You're in the perfect spot in those SEC network games because sometimes you're presented like a 10-3 game in the year 2025. A guy like you needs to be calling that.
So you were the one watching Saturday. You were the one. Yeah. Hey, listen, we're not building bombs here, right? I mean, as serious as we all take our college football, and I love it that we do, the fact of the matter is we're trying to entertain. It's not always easy. Sometimes normally the content is great, but the games don't always deliver. But I'm so lucky in that I have two guys who played in the league, and Jordan Rodgers standing right next to me, and Cole Kublik down on the field, where if we need to dial into the X's and O's, there's nobody else I'd want to do that with. And they can do it. They can go really deep with those X's and O's. So hopefully we teach a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is life or death, SEC football. We know
Sure.
that. But then at the same time, Tom, you may be calling the LSU Southeastern game and mention the Popeyes in Donaldsonville, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. Hey, listen, shout out. That's a great chicken sandwich, no matter where you get it. But the one in Donaldsonville, I feel like they put a little extra TLC into that thing.
Perfect. Great stuff. What's it like for you to cover LSU athletics? I know that you're a Missouri graduate, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's a great broadcasting journalism school. I think Glenn Gilbo down here, he graduated from Missouri. There's some others I know of, but when you go to LSU and you call, whether it's a baseball game at Ellick Box, football, Tiger Stadium, what have you kind of picked up on over the years?
Well, I think the key thing with LSU is those three sports that I'm lucky enough to cover in the SEC and come down to Baton Rouge to do so on a regular basis. They're all three vastly different, right? I mean, I remember the first year I was in there for a basketball game. It was late in the season. They weren't doing too well. And I said to somebody, hey, how's it going to be? I mean, I grew up watching Brad Nessler call games in the Thriller Dome. Like, I was ready for this place to be rocking and rolling. And somebody who works there looked at me and he goes, well, baseball starts this afternoon. And I went, really? Like, that's how it works? And sure enough, I think it was a Tulane game that they were in town for that one.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that, but there were 8,000 people over there for Wednesday afternoon baseball game, and the basketball was a little paltry. Now, I've been lucky enough to be there when that place was packed and rocking, and I know that the identity of basketball is different than that of baseball and different than that of football. So it's like like the leaves changing, right? But as the seasons shift, my attitude towards I don't want to say the seriousness, because everybody wants to win and it all matters, but certainly the history and the traditions are different sport to sport. And I really appreciate that. I love getting down there in the fall, in the winter, in the spring, and kind of experiencing that thing year round.
Well, there's a joke here, Tom, that LSU basketball, they've got like 4 weeks to grab people's attention between the end of football and the start of baseball. And if they don't, they're checked into baseball 100%. So
yeah. And listen, I respect that about fans. Like, I would never think it was my business to tell a fan base what they should or shouldn't do, or think or not think, or attend or not attend. You go spend your money wherever you want. But I was talking to Bo Pelini a million years ago when he was at Nebraska, and he was talking about his time at LSU. And he said, you don't understand. LSU football is the only thing that matters down there. And there was a little bit of hyperbole. And I said, Coach, they got a baseball program. And that women's basketball program's been to some Final Fours. And the men's basketball program's been pretty good. Well, yeah. But they really love football. And I got his point. And it was about the seriousness of the game and how every Saturday night matters at Tiger Stadium. But the reality is that those passions are shared throughout and throughout all of those sports. It matters down there.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember another time where all the programs have really been this good all at once. Now, football is not where it needs to be. Men's basketball isn't where it needs to be. But like over the last 5 years, the amount of national championships that have been won by the different sports, and we just fired the athletic director, which some people might find ironic. What do you think watching this from afar right now? What's going on in Louisiana? Because on one end of things, look, I love Pat McAfee, but when he's impersonating the governor and doing his voice, there's the Cajun part of me that says, hey, don't make fun of us too much. But on the other side of things, I'm like, well, we do a bad job of leaning into stereotypes about us as well. So the last like 10 days in Louisiana, what are you seeing?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that you don't really know a culture until you've been in it for a little bit. And Coach Ogeron and I talked at length about, the Cajun impersonation is not something that is welcomed. And I totally understood that when we had that discussion. But full disclosure, before I had that discussion, I thought it was just like, making fun of an Alabama accent or poking fun at, somebody from Tennessee and the way they draw or Kentucky. But just that conversation, going one-on-one with the man, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about that. So put that to the side. I don't think enough of our national media has learned that because they haven't spent enough time down there, first and foremost. I think it's unfortunate that the grandstanding and the politics have gotten in the way of the message, which is, I believe, twofold. Number one, LSU football matters. It matters to the people that show up in that stadium. It matters to the people who maybe haven't ever stepped foot in that stadium because it matters to the entire state. And right or wrong, there is a portion of the state's identity, whether you're inside the borders or outside, that is wrapped up in the success or failure of LSU football. To me, that's the beauty of the entire thing. That's why it matters to somebody, whether they're sitting in the nicest suite at that stadium or they can't ever afford a ticket or a trip to Baton Rouge, but they're watching from wherever within the state. That the way that is baked into the culture is what makes LSU football so special. So the grandstanding occurs with the politicians, no matter where you are. It happens in Columbus, Ohio. It happens in Athens, Georgia, and I get it. But I hope it doesn't get in the way of LSU hiring the best coach that they could hire to lead this team to another national championship. We know what the history is with 3 of the last 4 coaches. We know why Brian Kelly was coerced to come down there from Notre Dame, where he had a BCS, playoff team. So I think the way it's viewed from the outside is a couple different angles, but no one can question the passion that the fan base has and that the state has, and that's why it's such an attractive job.
Yeah, and not to get caught up on silly stuff, but the Cajun thing, it's like, okay, I can call you stupid Cajun, you call me stupid Cajun. It's like when an outsider does it, they're like, okay, and that's why I think a lot of people, Tom, when Ogeron won the title in this state, is like, well, see, look, there's the stupid Cajun. He just had the greatest team of all time. That's what really kind of galvanized a lot of people. And it didn't work out. He had to move on, and he wants to come back. I think he's made it clear. I see him jog on the levee here all the time, Tom. He's still around. But
what you just referenced, just to jump in, like everything that you just referenced, that's family. I mean, not to borrow a word that Brian Kelly mispronounced, but that's family, right? Yeah. Like I can say things or think things about my brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and uncles that if somebody else said, we're fighting. Like that's just the way it goes. Yeah. That doesn't mean it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but when it's your blood. And by the way, I saw it. I understand and respect the perspective of what you think the outsiders said when they hosted that trophy in 19 at the Superdome. But what I saw was a state that was fiercely proud of one of their own, taking the program that means so much to the absolute top of the mountain, and the respect that garnered for the state as a whole and what he represented.
Tom, you a music fan? You keep up with rock bands?
Yeah, I try. Yeah.
Well, we both grew up in the 80s, right? What are you, 45?
Yeah, that's about right.
Well, like Van Halen, for example, you had Alex and Eddie, they're
Uh-huh.
brothers. They fight all the time. But then somebody steps in the middle, and it's like, okay, that guy's the enemy,
That's right.
So that's how family works, right? Oasis, those two brothers, Noah and Liam, they hate each other, but then you step in the middle, there's a problem. So that's what family is.
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing here, is that if Oasis can come back together as they did this fall,
Yes.
that Ed Ogeron could come back and be the head coach at LSU again. That's those tracks can run parallel, I suppose.
There's at least one person rooting for that to happen who may or may not be my father, who is Cajun to the core, who
Sure.
thinks they should have never gotten rid of him in the first place, probably. But great memories of 2019. Ed Ogeron in many ways is like Mike Ditka. No matter what, Ditka's the coach of the '85 Bears, and Ogeron's the head coach of the 2019 Tigers. So
I love it. That's a great comp, and the Bears are still looking for a quarterback that would be good as Jim McMahon was in '85. And I don't know that LSU will ever find another Joe Burrow because that offense was just incredible and all the weapons that he had. But if you can, then you can get back on winning ways.
yeah, I didn't plan to go in that direction, but Buddy Ryan is Dave Aranda. I mean, I guess we could we could go down breaking it down. Brian Kelly, when he came here, I thought it was unusual, but still a big name with a highly successful resume. He was, in my opinion, good to deal with. He was a lot nicer to us in the media than I expected. Let us shoot a lot of practice, which for a local television peon who's got a Phil Sportscast, I appreciated that. But it just seemed like he didn't lean into the fan base. He didn't really connect with them. And if he would have won 10, 11 games and made playoffs, we wouldn't talk about that as much. But it just seemed like maybe the work ethic also was questioned by a lot of people, and it didn't work out. What did you see in his 3.5 years here?
I think fit is a word when it comes to coaching hires that's only used in college sports, right? I mean, the Chiefs hired the Eagles' failed coach, and nobody said, "Gosh, I wonder if Andy Reid is a fit here in the Midwest." No, you hired a guy who knows how to win games, and you got a quarterback who may be the best of his generation, and the rest is history for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think it's very important because, listen, here's the difference between college sports and pro sports. To properly win games at any level, you need a great roster. Well, if you're trying to build a roster and you're the Los Angeles Dodgers, all you do is start writing checks, and it's coming from your organization's bank account. If you want to build a great football program, the checks that you're able to write are coming from someone else. So they have to believe in the program. They have to believe in the head coach. They have to see that passion and that dedication from that head coach and the staff before they're going to write a check. It's the weirdest thing in sports, right? I mean, I imagine somebody who's, over in Europe and a Premier League fan is taking in college football on one Saturday, and they say, what do you mean everybody's payroll is different, but we don't know whose payroll is what? Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean we don't know who's spending what, or who can pay the best players? So that's a key part of it. So I never thought he was a fit, but I respected the idea that they went and found a guy who would won games, and he'd won at every different level. And Notre Dame may not have the same type of pressure that LSU has, but it's got its own set of rules and expectations, and he was both up and down there and built that thing back up. He's probably first and only head coach standing on the sideline before the game. I checked in with him. We had a discussion about his wine collection as opposed to a discussion about what the offensive attack was going to look like on that particular night. But that's fine. Everybody's allowed to have their own personality, and that's not to say that you can't find the next head coach who may not be Southern born and bred, or that comes from within the league and can't be successful. I mean, how many people really knew who Nick Saban was before he showed up from East Lansing? And he's the greatest coach in college football. So there are no guarantees in this world of trying to hire and therefore fire college football coaches.
Yeah. Well, to your point, Tom, we've said it a million times around here. Skip Bertman was a Jewish man from Miami. He comes over to Baton Rouge, and for the last 40 plus years, he's had a major impact. Dale Brown was from Minot, South Dakota, came down here. So I think nobody is a fit when they come here, even Ed Ogeron, because I grew up in Lafayette, where the Cajun stuff is prominent. It's not as prominent as in Baton Rouge. I think people embrace it when it's cool.
Sure.
But it's a lot different. But I think you've kind of got to be Clay and let people mold you a little bit and then kind of learn, okay, this is the way the place is. That is what a fit is. And winning. And winning is not 8-4, Tom, as you know. Winning is a lot more than that. And I just kind of wonder, how will Brian Kelly be remembered? He won 71% of his games. He was 19-10 in the SEC. That's nothing to sneeze at. But now, with so much money invested in the coach, the roster, the athletic director's making $2 million a year, the assistants are making $2 million a year. It's on steroids, and so is the pressure.
Well, I don't think there's any way you could look at his era and not consider it a failure. And not to say he's to blame for it, but given what was invested in the program, first and foremost, his contract, and then some of the decision making that went into how we're going to build this thing in an NIL era. And LSU was woefully behind others in terms of spending money and getting guys in. I remember being there last year, the week that lost the quarterback to Michigan. And the thought was, we're fine, because we're going to take all of that money that we had earmarked for him and redistribute it throughout the roster. And I thought that was a great idea, because I thought the quarterback coming back was going to be an elite quarterback, as he had been, especially through the air. God laughs at our plans sometimes, right? But given everything that was invested, and specifically, I think, looking back at the success of the previous three coaches, where the bar has been set, you're brought in on a $100 million contract to win a national championship. You fail to do that, that's a failure. And obviously being let go in the middle of the season would add to that.
Yeah. Tom, we could talk about coaching candidates. We could talk about 10 guys, and a month from now we could watch this, and the guy they hire is none of the 10 guys we talked about.
Yeah.
I feel like Brian Kelly came out of left field. Les Miles, they kind of talked about him, but that kind of surprised me. When Ed Ogeron was hired, Tom Herman was the hot name. Got to have Tom Herman. Jimbo Fisher was mentioned. Neither hire Ed. And I think Nick Saban kind of came out of left field when they paid $1.2 million for a coach, Tom. This is insanity. How can we do this? So, well, let's just start. I mean, Lane Kiffin is the big fish he's floating that people are trying to reel in, whether it's Florida maybe, or LSU, or Auburn, or whoever the case may be. Kiffin is getting paid $9 million a year. The pressure at Ole Miss is not the pressure at Florida and LSU. Would he leave?
Oh, I think he would leave. Absolutely. Now, would he leave this year?
Yeah.
I think if he had his druthers from a family perspective, he'd rather have another year in Oxford, where he's got all of his family in his backyard, almost literally. But you don't get to pick and choose when all of these jobs come open, right? Because you throw Penn State into the mix, and the leverage will never. I shouldn't say never. You should never use the word never in college football. But I can't imagine the leverage will be any higher next season with jobs at this level coming open. And when I say at this level, it's not just the history that those programs have. It's the want to win from the boosters and the people who are going to fund this whole thing. Now, will Lane Kiffin get a raise regardless of where he's coaching next year? Absolutely. We're told he already has one on the table in Oxford to stay there, and a substantial raise, substantial, to make him, if not the highest paid, one of the highest paid. But anymore, the chase to win a national championship, in my opinion, has less to do with your annual salary and more to do with the amount of money that you can invest in the players and invest in that roster. He's had some great flexibility there. They have made incredible decisions when it comes to the portal to get the right kind of guys in. And if you look at what Ole Miss has accomplished this year with a Division II quarterback, to be able to build the quarterback room in a way that your big ticket item doesn't pan out. And, oh, by the way, we got a guy in here from Division II who can be just as good and bail us out and find us wins in a pinch. He's called the Portal King for a reason, and I think it's the culture that he's developed there. So I think he's nobody knows what Lane Kiffin is thinking, right?
Sure,
But a
sure.
coach with his pedigree, with his background, you look at the history of the moves that he's made. Um, his next move is to win a national championship. His next move is to be able to regularly, not a one-off, but regularly beat the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world. He finally built a roster last year that he thought he had the ability to do that. There wasn't enough consistency there. They fell short. They lose at home to Kentucky on a fourth down play, among other losses. Now it feels like the year after the great roster, they've had more winning and they have a higher ceiling. So there are no sure things in here in this world of college football. But I think that if you look at his pedigree, his background, and what his goals are, it's not just the importance of family now, but also where can I go to take me to that next step? Because he's been heartbreakingly close at Ole Miss.
Yeah. Well, when this job came open, when Ed Ogeron was fired, I think at the time he was viewed as too immature, had not held down one job for a while, job hopper. And look, he's still playfully messy. Life's short. I don't care about what he says on Twitter and jokes around with people. That's fine. I don't care. But I wonder if LSU had the choice to make, would they make a different choice if they would have hired Kiffin a couple, back in 2021 is an interesting thought. But, and it feels like that John Summerall at Tulane, he feels like the Billy Napier this time, not to compare two different people. And I like Billy a lot. And he did things with the Raging Cajuns no one's ever done. And I don't know if he was set up to fail at Florida or what, but it's maybe unfair to compare. But Summerall, the media guys that cover him in New Orleans say he's a winner and he is going to win. And if you don't hire him, somebody else is going to win. And it's very simplistic to say, well, his team got smashed by UT San Antonio last week. Do we want to hire him? Okay. It happens, right? So, you know him at all?
No, I haven't. Well, I only knew him a million years ago when he was at Kentucky, and so spent this much time with him. But I know the respect that people have for him, for the job that he's done, and I would also say, given his coaching background, going back to Troy and the success he had there, is the patience that he's had. Right. And so many guys jump at that next job immediately. I don't think John Summerall has to jump at anything. Now, this could be the cycle where the opportunity is in front of him. And if it's not LSU, it could very well be Auburn. If it's not Auburn, it could be Florida. We don't know how all of these things are going to shake out. But I think he's wanted and well respected. It doesn't hurt that he knows what it's like, A, to recruit in the South, and B, to be part of the SEC. I think those are two very important things. Now, once again, you could have asked me 4 years ago or 3 years ago, this head coach at James Madison, this Signetti guy, could he win in the Big Ten at Indiana? No chance, right? No, that's an easy bet to make against that come line. But now he's proven that it's possible. And Indiana looks like a college football playoff team for the second straight season, if not one of the best in the country. So it kind of points to the unpredictableness of this entire thing.
Yeah, and Summerall, that kind of rhymes with Napier, because Napier was offered jobs and didn't take them before he took the Florida job. I think maybe South Carolina, Mississippi State, maybe some others came up, and he waited for the big one, and it didn't work out. Okay, I buried the lead.
Uh-oh.
Eli Drinkwitz. I mean, you went to school at Missouri. I joked that he kind of looks like a character from The Office or something. Maybe he doesn't look like a football coach, but obviously he's a brilliant mind and he's young. And I think if he was at LSU, he would sleep 1 hour a night and probably, work to get this thing back to where LSU fans feel like it deserves to be and embrace the job a little more than the previous head coach. Tell me about Eli.
Well, I think you're hitting on something with the previous head coach. And if to put it in LSU terms, I think Eli would be the Jay Johnson of college football. I mean, he would be consumed with building the roster and winning the games. And we're not going to sleep until we bring home a trophy. It's hard to judge exactly what resources are in college football, right? Like all of these numbers are behind a paywall in terms of what your roster is getting paid and how much is getting donated and what's the collective doing. But all I know is that Eli Drinkwitz has done an amazing job with the resources he's had at Missouri. And perhaps the biggest thing he's done, and this was at the forefront of NIL, is he brought this passion and enthusiasm to recruiting that allowed the people who needed to fund the program to want to invest in Eli Drinkwitz, right? Hey, let me be a steward of your money and turn your money into a great recruit. Missouri doesn't have a lot of five-star guys. In fact, we did the Georgia game. They almost beat them a few years ago. This must have been pre-COVID, must have been 19. And Missouri had one five-star recruit to that point, and the stars came out, I think, like late 80s, early 90s. One five-star recruit in the entire history. It was a wide receiver named Dorial Green Beckham. Georgia had like 8 on the field that night. And yet they took him the fourth quarter and nearly won the game. Now, since then, he's done a great job of pinpointing his recruiting. Missouri's not going to be in the position that LSU, Alabama, and Georgia are, where you can just collect those 4- and 5-star guys. So you better be right. It's a difference between spending like the Los Angeles Dodgers or spending like the Tampa Bay Rays. Like if you miss as a Yankee or a Dodger general manager, well, then just go buy a Giambi. Go find a Stanton. Go fill in with somebody. Pick up Freddie Freeman as a free agent. Go get a guy. Most programs can't do that. And so he's been able to, I think, build that through talent acquisition, talent development, and this passion and energy that he has. And if he hadn't lost his starting quarterback a couple of weeks ago, they would still be very much in the discussion of one of these SEC teams to get into the college football playoff. They still could. They're still sitting there on the periphery. Yeah. But the loss at Vanderbilt, when you lose your starting quarterback, certainly knocked them down a peg.
Yeah, great stuff. I've been to Columbia twice. Beautiful place. Gets cold up there. Long winter, right? I mean, young people, I guess there's some young people that like to go where it's cold, but they prefer South Beach and warmth, right? I mean,
that's right.
You got used to it.
I got used to it, but then as soon as I moved to the South, I forgot about it overnight, and then I was out putting my puffer coat on when the temperature dipped down into the 50s when, in Boone County, Missouri, you don't reach for the coat until it dips below freezing. Yeah. And I think that's probably, from a culture standpoint, there's that Mason-Dixon line that runs right down south of Missouri. That's a big separator, especially once you get to this time of year.
We had a guy named Johnny Lombardi from Chicago that interned with us and now works in Denham Springs. And he told us that the summer in Louisiana is worse than the winter in Chicago. And I just do not agree. There's no way, with I got to shovel snow every day. I got to put stuff on my tires. I can't fly out. It just, anyway, I didn't mean to take the conversation off course about the climate, Tom Hart, but a few more things. So just real quick, Marcus Freeman, after he stepped in to kind of be, the father after our daddy left us, so to speak, to go to LSU, I'm your guy. Jaden Osbury is Verge Osbury's son, the LSU athletic director. So I'm sure they've spoken about this. I don't know if he would leave Notre Dame to LSU. And as simplistic as it would be, LSU fans, people could say, well, you hired the Notre Dame coach. How'd that go the first time, right? To do it again. I don't think that's happening. Any other names on your radar or what you've heard? Or you got better things to do than worry about this that's going to be decided from now?
Yeah, I mean, what I've learned when it comes to these coaching searches is that it's fun fodder, but it's kind of like having a Tuesday night college football playoff reveal show. Like nothing matters until the end, right? Like, and it's great for message boards and it's great for podcasts and it's great for talk radio, and I get that. I go back to that previous cycle when Brian Kelly left, a playoff-bound Notre Dame team before the season was over to come to LSU, and Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma, where he had built this incredible offense, to go to USC. And there are other examples of this over the years where, it's a gun for hire, right? So when it comes to that, it's really hard to predict. There's going to be a wild card, whether it ends up at LSU, Auburn, Florida, Arkansas, Penn State, Oklahoma State. there's going to be somebody out there that we're all going to go, wow, I can't believe he left A to go to B. And it could be an NFL guy. I think the offensive coordinator at Oregon is a hot name and a commodity. And if they continue to win, will only climb. There's also a lot of recency bias, right? Like if you're a great coach on November 6th and you're going to be considered, well, then should we put, kind of like you said about Summerall and Tulane losing one game, should we put a ton of weight into the next 5 games that you coach or that your team plays, or the hay already in the barn in terms of who you are?
It's a long-term decision that has pressure to make a short-term decision with the calendar.
Yes, and the calendar, I think, unfairly impacts these decision makers and influencers and the people that are writing the checks. Because if I were hiring a coach, I would want the best guy for the job long term. And I use that in quotes, right? I mean, that might be 5 years, that might be 15 years. So are we willing then to give up one portal class to wait for the best coach to come available? The challenge in this cycle is, okay, let's pretend, just for argument's sake, that one coach is Lane Kiffin, and you're going to wait for him to finish. And you wait for Ole Miss to finish their season and get through the playoff. How do you know you have the upper hand instead of Florida? And what if Penn State is still waiting? And what if everybody's all in this same camp? Now, all of a sudden, you're overpaying for that commodity. So there's going to be a surprise out there somewhere. There's going to be a coordinator. There's going to be a James Franklin or somebody who's out of the business right now. I don't think Jimbo Fisher is getting the LSU job or any of these great jobs, but that guy wants to get back into it. What impact does it have if Jimbo ends up at Oklahoma State or Arkansas? What happens if somebody already established at a premier program? I mean, nobody thought Lane Kiffin was going to leave Tennessee for USC in the dead of the night a million years ago, but he did. And that all of a sudden opened up a premier job at Tennessee. So these aren't like a domino race. Like we've seen those huge domino things that people set up. You can watch them on YouTube. This is more like those marble races, right? I mean, just because you're in the lead at one point doesn't mean that you won't fly off the track. And that yellow marble that started last ends up in first place at the end. It's 100% unpredictable.
Yeah. Tom, you've got my ridiculous brain going here.
I love it.
Jimbo Fisher comes back. Will Muschamp's out there. He's watching his son at Vanderbilt. We get Dooley back, get rid of the orange pants, get some purple pants. And then Nick Saban could just be the GM CEO. He could come to work 4 or 5 hours a day and then go do his ESPN thing. I can see it all right now. I don't think they can sell Jimbo to the fan base, although to completely rule him out, I think look, there might be a 1% chance, but Jimbo's out there and he's got a lot of history with LSU. But what's it? How often how much time have you spent around Nick Saban?
Not much. We're not in the same town very often. Yeah. I always treasured our coaches meetings that we had on Fridays when we went into Tuscaloosa to cover a game. And it helped me, Jock, because I had 2 guys who knew the game, could talk the X's and O's. And that's what Saban wanted to talk about. He didn't want to talk about the frivolous stuff or the fluff or, any of this nonsense. Like, no, you want to talk about why I run this offense or why I hired this coach or what we did on 4th down and why we did it. Or we got him up one time to, he was teaching, of course, the defensive backs during practice on Thursday. And we got him to give us a dissertation on the importance of the hip swivel as a defensive back and where your eyes should be in man-to-man coverage. So,
hey, Tom, this is football, all right? You want to talk about fluff? You can talk about it, all right?
I asked him a question one day that he didn't like, and the conversation always started with a styrofoam coffee cup. And this is transparent, so it won't really do the job. But he's just peering at me over the coffee cup, and it was about one of his players who didn't play much, but had developed this statistical measurement of line play, and he obviously knew nothing about it. And he's just peering at me over the coffee cup with those eyes. And if you want to make him mad, bring up something about his program, and this is really hard to do, that he doesn't know about. And he finally lowered the coffee cup and he said, well, I don't know anything about that, all right? And then he just stopped. And I'm begging one of my partners to ask him about the RPO, ask him about the value of a pro style offense versus the RPO and what pro style is better. And then we got back in his good graces.
Well, Tom, I came here to Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 2001. I was 23 or 4. I looked like I was 15. This is my dream job to cover
I love
LSU sports. And the first 3 coaches I had to cover were Nick Saban, Skip Bertman, and John Brady, which was a combination of terrifying, intimidating. You know, here I am trying to ask Nick Saban questions at a press conference, totally unequipped, you know, in over my skis. But
yeah,
he got me ready. I mean, I could say, well, coach, it's a beautiful day outside today. Well, what makes you think you're the authority to say it's a beautiful day outside? You know, I mean, that's just, he was rough.
Hey, baptism by fire, right?
Absolutely.
You figure it out. If you don't step in it a few times, you won't know how to clean the work boots. So you got to get out there and get dirty.
Tom, I'm just glad Twitter wasn't around, X, Facebook, social media platforms, because I might have jumped off the bridge. I would have got nailed to the cross back then. But
some of these coaches, guys and gals, have a great sense of humor. I'll tell you a quick Kim Mulkey story. A million years ago, she was at Baylor, and
3 minutes left on my cheap Zoom. Just saying. Okay. Sorry.
I was calling the game, and my buddy was running stats, and she knew my buddy. We convinced him to do the halftime interview off camera, and we convinced Coach Mulkey to respond to him. That's the dumbest effing question I've ever heard in my life. But she didn't cut out the curse word. He froze. It was all a gag. Baylor was up 25 points. They ended up winning by 50. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen on camera.
This was live? This was on camera?
It was live to tape in the industry.
Okay.
So people knew, and she knew, and her SID had been there forever, knew it wasn't going to air.
Gotcha.
And it was just all of us pulling a gag on one of the guys that we knew and worked with.
That's awesome. Well, she's another one that when she first came here, I'm like, they're going to win a lot, but I was kind of terrified of her. But she's been great to cover to me. I mean, she's cool. And I joke with her, Tom. I said, she's a lot like Dolly Parton. She's blonde and she plays up that country thing and that country twang, but she's the smartest person in the room. So
yeah, it keeps you off balance. There's no doubt about that.
Well, Tom, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. We'll be watching you. What game are you calling this weekend?
We got Florida at Kentucky Saturday night. So
Gotcha.
LSU fans might be otherwise occupied, and I understand, but we're always good on the second screen. We're always good on the second screen.
Well, it's funny, Tom. LSU's playing Alabama this week, which is normally an epic event, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, we have a game to play with everything else going on here. So it's
what a great rivalry.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. See you down the road.